I always thought I had a keen eye for detecting red flags in relationships. Maybe it was the years of therapy, or perhaps it was just my own finely tuned intuition. Yet, somehow, I was completely blindsided by Derek, a man I met in a way that has become all too common these days, through a dating app. It was 2 years ago when I first saw his profile. He had a charming smile, eyes that seemed to glimmer with sincerity, and a bio that promised adventure and depth. World traveler, aspiring chef, and lover of all things spontaneous. Asterisk. In our early conversations, Derek seemed genuinely interested in everything about me. We quickly bonded over our mutual love for travel, our shared disdain for olives, and our favorite 80s movies. I was smitten. When we met for the first time at a cozy downtown coffee shop, his charisma was undeniable. He walked in wearing a dark grey coat over a fitted shirt and jeans that seemed to hug him in all the right places. We spent hours talking, lost in a bubble that felt separate from the rest of the world. He was everything I'd hoped for and more. As we continued seeing each other, Derek became a central part of my life. We spent weekends exploring the city's hidden gems, late nights cooking together, and early mornings sipping coffee on my balcony, wrapped in blankets against the chill of dawn. My friends adored him, and my parents, though initially skeptical, warmed up to him after a few months of knowing him. However, despite all of this, Derek remained elusive about his personal life. His reluctance to introduce me to his family or to let me see his apartment was always shrouded in the excuse of his past traumas. At first, I didn't push. He seemed genuine in his explanations, and I respected his need for privacy. He told me stories of a tumultuous childhood and a strained relationship with his family, which supposedly explained why he was so secretive about them. Yet, there were moments when doubts crept in. It started with the little things. The nights he wouldn't answer his phone or respond to texts because he was working late. The weekends where he'd cancel plans last minute due to emergencies or surprise double shifts at work. The odd times he'd disappear, only to reappear with a new excuse, a new reason for being absent. In hindsight, all the red flags were there, fluttering wildly, yet I dismissed them, blinded by my affection and his convincing reassurances. It was a crisp fall day when I decided to surprise Derek at his office. I had prepared a small basket with his favourite snacks, thinking it would be a nice way to show my appreciation for all the work he'd been doing lately. He had mentioned his office's location, a sleek glass building in the business district, several times, but I had never been there myself. The morning began with me selecting the finest items for his basket, a selection of gourmet chocolates, his favourite flavoured nuts, and a couple of protein bars he swore by. I wrapped everything neatly, tied a ribbon around it, and set off with a smile, excited to see the surprise on his face. Navigating the busy streets, I parked my car and walked the short distance to his office building. It was larger than I had imagined, with people bustling in and out, suits in sharp contrast to the casual outfits of downtown. My heart raced with excitement as I approached the reception desk, imagining Derek's pleased reaction. "Hi, I'm here to see Derek," I said, flashing a warm smile at the receptionist. She looked up, slightly puzzled. "Derek? We don't have anyone by that name here." Confused, I wondered if I had misunderstood something. "He works in marketing," I added, hoping this would clarify things. The receptionist shook her head apologetically. "I'm sorry, but there's no Derek in marketing or any other department. Are you sure you have the right building?" The room seemed to spin for a moment. I thanked her and walked back out, trying to process this information. Maybe he worked remotely now, I reasoned, or perhaps I had mixed up the address. But deep down, doubt gnawed at me. Determined to figure it out, I decided to call him. As I dialed his number, I wandered into a nearby park, needing to clear my head and gather my thoughts. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail, his familiar voice suddenly feeling distant and unfamiliar. I sat on a bench, trying to calm the turmoil inside me. As I scrolled through my phone, debating what to do next, I looked up and froze. There, across the park, was Derek. My heart skipped a beat, part excitement, part disbelief. But as my eyes settled on the scene before me, my heart sank. Derek was with a woman and 2 children, laughing and playing like the perfect family. The little boy chased after a soccer ball while the girl clung to his leg, giggling as Derek playfully swung her around. The woman watched with a smile that radiated warmth and contentment, a sight so ordinary yet intimate that it made my stomach churn. For a moment, I was rooted to the spot, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. My mind raced with possibilities, each more damning than the last. Was this his family? Had I been the other woman all along? Anger, betrayal, and sadness all battled for dominance within me. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the park, which sharply contrasted with the cold realization I was grappling with. I watched them for what felt like hours, my emotions a turbulent storm. Part of me wanted to run, to leave this place and pretend I never saw any of it, but I couldn't. I needed answers. Summoning every ounce of courage, I rose from the bench and walked towards them, each step feeling heavier than the last. My heart pounded loudly in my chest, and I felt a wave of nausea at what I was about to do. Derek was crouched down, helping his son with his shoelaces, when he noticed me approaching. The smile on his face faded into shock, then panic as he registered who I was. "Derek!" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Ella," he began, but I cut him off. "Who is this, Derek?" I demanded, gesturing towards the woman and children. My voice wavered despite my efforts to remain composed. He hesitated, his gaze flicking between me and the woman, who now stood with a protective arm around her daughter. This is Claire, and these are my kids," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The confirmation felt like a physical blow. I staggered back, unable to comprehend the enormity of his betrayal. "Your kids," I repeated, my voice breaking. "You have a family." Claire stepped forward, her expression a mix of confusion and anger. "Derek, what is she talking about?" He turned to her, his eyes pleading. "Claire, I can explain." But I wasn't about to let him weave another web of lies. "We've been together for 2 years, Claire. 2 years he's been with me, all the while hiding this from both of us." The truth crashed down on Claire like a tidal wave, her face blanching with disbelief and pain. She looked at Derek, her eyes wide with shock. "Is this true?" Derek's silence spoke volumes. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, only the guilty admission of his actions. The look of betrayal on Claire's face mirrored my own, and for a moment we stood united in our shared devastation. "How could you?" I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "How could you do this to both of us?" The park seemed to fall silent, the world narrowing to this single, heart-wrenching moment. Derek looked utterly defeated, but any sympathy I might have felt was swallowed by the hurt and anger coursing through me. Claire took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "We need to talk," she said, looking at me, her eyes searching mine for understanding and solidarity. I nodded, grateful for her strength. "Yes, we do." Leaving Derek behind with the children, Claire and I walked to a nearby bench, our steps heavy with the weight of the situation. The distance from him provided a temporary solace, a chance to gather our thoughts and find clarity in the chaos. Claire was the first to speak, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. "I had no idea. He told me he was working late shifts at the hospital." She paused, rubbing her temples as if trying to alleviate the pain caused by Derek's betrayal. "He's a nurse, you know. I should have known something was off." I nodded, feeling a bittersweet relief that I wasn't the only one fooled by his lies. "He told me he worked in marketing," I said bitterly. Always had a convenient excuse for why I couldn't visit his workplace or meet his family. Claire sighed, her eyes reflecting a deep sadness. "We've been married for 5 years. Our kids are 4 and 6. She shook her head, disbelief still etched in her features. How could he maintain such a lie? The enormity of his deceit settled heavily on us both. I thought back to the countless times Derek had cancelled plans or made excuses, realizing how artfully he had played both sides of his double life. We shared stories, comparing timelines and unraveling the threads of Derek's elaborate deception. Claire told me about the nights he'd come home late, citing emergencies and demanding privacy. It was as if he had built a fortress around his lies, a carefully constructed facade that had only now begun to crumble. I recounted our moments together, the vacations, the plans for the future that were nothing more than illusions. Each memory was a painful reminder of how thoroughly he had deceived us both. "Did you ever suspect anything?" I asked, needing to know if she had seen any warning signs that I had missed. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not really. There were times when he seemed distant, but I thought it was just stress from work. I never imagined—" Her voice trailed off, the weight of the truth too heavy to bear. We sat in silence, two strangers bound by a shared betrayal. Despite the heartache, there was a strange sense of camaraderie between us, a recognition of the strength it took to face the truth head-on. "I can't believe I let him fool me for so long," I admitted, my voice tinged with regret. "I thought I was smarter than this." Claire placed a comforting hand on my arm. "It's not your fault. He's the one who lied and manipulated us. We both trusted him, and he took advantage of that." Her words offered a small measure of comfort, a reminder that the blame lay squarely on Derek's shoulders, not ours. Together, we resolved to confront him, to demand answers and closure for the pain he had caused. Returning to the park, we found Derek sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. The children played nearby, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around them. As we approached, Derek looked up, his eyes filled with remorse. "Ella, Claire," he began, his voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." I crossed my arms, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Sorry? You've been living a lie, Derek. For 2 years you've deceived us both. How can you possibly justify that?" He sighed, looking older than I had ever seen him. "I didn't plan for it to go this far. At first, it was just a distraction, a way to escape the pressures of my life. But then I fell for you, Ella, and I didn't know how to stop." Claire stepped forward, her eyes steely with determination. "And what about us, Derek? Your family? How could you put us through this?" Derek seemed to crumble under the weight of her words. "I love you, Claire. I love our children. But I got caught up in this other life, and I didn't know how to untangle myself from it." His excuses fell flat, the emptiness of his words hanging in the air. Claire and I exchanged a glance, united in our resolve to not let him off the hook easily. "This isn't about love, Derek. It's about betrayal," Claire said firmly. "You've hurt both of us deeply, and there's no easy way to fix that." I nodded in agreement, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We deserve better than this. You can't have it both ways, Derek. You've lost our trust, and that's not something you can regain overnight." The reality of his actions seemed to finally hit him, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I know I've messed up everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand how sorry I am." Claire shook her head, her expression a mix of sadness and disappointment. "Sorry isn't enough, Derek. Not after everything you've put us through." For a moment, silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant laughter of the children playing. I watched Derek, wondering if he truly grasped the gravity of his actions, if he understood the irreparable damage he had done to all of us. Finally, Claire spoke, her voice calm yet resolute. "We'll figure out how to move forward, but for now, you need to stay away from us. You need to give us space and time to heal." Derek nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." But I couldn't shake the feeling that his promises were as hollow as the lies he had built his double life upon. The trust had been shattered, and there was no simple way to piece it back together. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing and rediscovering myself. The betrayal had left scars, but I was determined not to let it define me. With the support of friends and family, I began to piece my life back together, one step at a time. Claire and I remained in touch, our shared experience forging an unexpected bond between us. We supported each other through the difficult process of confronting the truth and finding closure. One evening, over coffee, Claire shared a revelation that resonated deeply with me. You know, this whole experience has taught me to trust my instincts more, to never ignore the signs, even when I don't want to see them. I nodded, understanding all too well the importance of listening to that inner voice. I've learned the same lesson. We both deserve to be with someone who values honesty and transparency. As time passed, I found myself embracing the lessons I had learned from this painful experience. I vowed never to ignore red flags again, to prioritize my own happiness and well-being above all else. Eventually, I re-entered the dating scene, armed with newfound wisdom and a clearer sense of what I wanted in a partner. I was no longer willing to settle for anything less than genuine love and respect. Derek's deception had taught me the importance of authenticity and the strength that comes from facing difficult truths. It was a hard-earned lesson, but one that ultimately led to personal growth and resilience. As I stood at the threshold of a new chapter, I felt a sense of liberation. The past was behind me, and the future held endless possibilities. With renewed confidence, I was ready to embrace whatever life had in store. A year later, I found myself strolling through the same park where my world had once shattered. The trees were lush and green, the air filled with the laughter of children and the scent of blooming flowers. As I walked, I spotted Claire with her children, enjoying a picnic on the grass. She waved me over, a warm smile on her face, and I joined them, grateful for the friendship we had forged from the ashes of betrayal. We talked and laughed, sharing stories of new beginnings and the strength we had found within ourselves. Claire had moved on, focusing on her children and her own happiness, and I had done the same. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, I realized that despite the heartache, I had emerged stronger and more resilient. The experience had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I was ready to face the future with open arms, knowing that I had the strength to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead. With a newfound sense of empowerment and a heart open to possibilities, I was finally free. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the world and the support of those who mattered most, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had learned to trust myself, to embrace the journey, and to never settle for anything less than the love and happiness I deserved. The past was a chapter closed, and the future stretched out before me, filled with endless opportunities and the promise of a life well lived.